Today I spoke with David Gutelius, who is the CEO of Motiva.ai. Now, I love smart people, man, and this guy is smart in aces. PhD, he's an advisor to companies, he's on the board of directors. He's done some very interesting research during his PhD and early career. But today he's the CEO of Motiva, and these guys are basically the brain behind a marketing stack. They ensure that marketers like you and I can always deliver the best campaign or the best converting campaign to our audience. So they're doing some phenomenal work there, and we go in depth into what David and the team are doing at Motiva. The other thing that David actually mentioned was that there's some huge changes coming that's going to impact you and myself as marketers. And that really comes down to the next generation, the next class of sort of anti-spam filters. And this will be built into web browsers, into the operating system, into email. And this is not 5 years away. We're talking literally months away, where it's going to significantly impact our effectiveness as marketers. So definitely something worth looking at. And we do go in relatively deep conversation around this new anti-spam challenges. So I hope you enjoy the podcast. This really is a doozy, some really good insights that you can take away and apply to your marketing operations. David, fantastic to be speaking with you today. So let's talk about, firstly, how did you sort of get to that epiphany in your life? I mean, you got a PhD in economic history. How did you get to that point where you said, you know what, when I grow up, I'm going to go into artificial intelligence and dominate the world?
Thanks, Justin. Well, it's been a long and winding and largely unplanned road, to tell you the truth. I started out as a behavioral economist in life and doing macroeconomic policy in the Middle East, and quickly decided that I wanted to do something more applied to do things to benefit the world in new ways. And happened to be at a premier center of artificial intelligence research in the Silicon Valley called SRI International, and it's based in Menlo Park, California, and was lucky enough to join a team at a time when we had a tremendous amount of funding to explore this space of artificial intelligence broadly, but specifically how do we use new techniques and machine learning to help the world? And specifically at that time, we post 9/11, we were fighting a very difficult fight against an enemy that largely operated asynchronously, asymmetrically from us. And we worked at that time very closely with the defense and intelligence community to create new capabilities that could help us address those needs on the battlefield more directly and in completely new ways. And so sort of joked at the time that SRI became the kind of the incubator for all of the postdocs who eventually wound up at Google and after that Facebook. But it was a tremendous time to be kind of in the space doing meaningful work and really applying cutting edge ideas directly to world changing problems.
Fascinating. So in terms of your company now, so Motiva, if I understand correctly, so basically you guys provide artificial intelligence for marketing. So basically the technology helps you adapt your messaging to customers. So it helps for better conversion. And as you scale, so this one-on-one personalization, Motiva helps towards sort of achieving that effectively. Is that sort of in the ballpark, or?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly in the ballpark. I guess, stepping back, what we recognized in kind of marketing more broadly is this need where, on the one hand, marketers have ever increasing pressure to show results, right? So boards and C-level staff are constantly putting pressure on the marketing team to actually show some results and contribute more to the bottom line of the company. company. And on the other hand, we saw this kind of large gap between sort of that rising set of expectations and the tools and processes that marketers have been using to actually get that mission done. And what we wanted to do was create something on the one hand that could close that gap and help marketers do things more effectively. But on the other hand, sort of shift, and this is maybe even more important to at least our mission, is to shift how we think about how we do marketing, how we think about customers, and thinking about that audience as more than an audience, as more than targets that you push content to across various different channels. It's an old-fashioned idea that marketing needs to be about largely push. And we wanted to change that into something that could be more adaptive, where we could help companies actually learn more about who they're speaking with, and then adapt that understanding of the audience to better serve that end audience and ultimately better serve business goals. So for us, it's really about creating relationships. And we happen to be using technology to sort of scale that. But at the end of the day, what we would like to do for our customers is help them create relationships. Sure, the sort of the tactical goal is higher conversion rates and better performing campaigns and all of those good things. It's actually less important than helping companies create decent relationships with customers.
So how does Motiva, where do you grab the data from? How do you use the data to sort of personalize it? Without getting too technical, otherwise you probably lose me. But basically, how does it function? How does it work its magic?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty straightforward, to be honest. There's definitely some secret sauce in there, but what we wanted to do was start with a simple kind of form of the problem around message optimization and really trying to get the right form of your message to the right audience at the right time. And the way that we go about doing that is you can think of as sort of massive experimentation, always on experimentation. So the closest maybe analog for this is what people do today called A/B testing, where typically you kind of carve off a test population and you carve off a control population, and you try to run some simple experiments, maybe a couple of versions of email, let's say, and figure out if there's a winner in there that performs better than the other option or options. What we do is a little different and much deeper. And you can think of it as kind of pulling in that same population, but instead of carving off a test and control population, essentially everybody's in the experimental pool all the time. And what we're trying to do is, given a population and given a set of message variations, what we want to do is carve up that population into sort of waves of batches to whom we send email out, let's say. And then with each wave of emails that go out, we're listening for signal back, positive and negative. What are people responding to? What are they opening? What are they clicking on? How much time are they dwelling? Where are they going to after that? And collecting that information on an incremental basis. So we're using that incremental signal to actually improve those successively, those waves of sending that we're sending out, or those waves of emails that we're sending out. And with each wave, we're getting just a little bit smarter about the population preferences over time. So that's basically sort of round robin what we do. Over time, we're using that incremental signal to create this nice feedback loop in the campaign. And over time, that campaign gets pretty darn smart about what people prefer, what they like, what they don't like, what they respond to, what they don't. A nice, actually unexpected side benefit of this, aside from sort of better performance, which is a good one, is the ability to really understand subpopulations, sub-audiences. In many ways, and many times, our customers have never seen before, have never seen quite in this form. And it's around things that those subpopulations respond to in some sort of clustered way. So you get these weird little funky little subpopulations that will pop up that say respond to a certain version of the messaging, and other populations that respond to different versions. And what that brings up is a real opportunity for the marketing team to take the results, take empirical data, generated behavioral data, and really ask themselves, how do we understand this audience in maybe a different way? How do we, next time we run this, maybe run a more targeted campaign for this interesting little subpopulation? How do we work with creative to say, hey, this subpopulation responded to this version of the message. Let's do more like this because it's working. Whatever you're doing, it's working.
So in terms of the subpopulation, does it sort of serve up commonalities? How would I define that sort of subpopulation? Because I suppose in traditional terms, what marketers would do is they would segment by demographic and a whole bunch of other factors. From what I understand, AI doesn't look at marketing the same way we would traditionally. How would we use that subset? How would we know to find more people like that?
Yeah. So this kind of brings up a more general point around sort of automation versus augmentation, and that kind of low-level battle that goes on between both folks in the field doing research in machine learning, but also even more today in the media. And there's a lot of assumption that you bring an AI, it's a black box, and it kind of just does magic for you. And for some types of problems, it can work that way, but it would be a mistake to make that kind of generalization across the board. And this goes to the larger sort of meme out there around artificial general intelligence, AGI, that the purpose of which is really to recreate us in some ways. And this really goes back to kind of the foundations of artificial intelligence, just more generally. So I'm of a school that is much more interested in augmentation than sort of simply automation. There are certainly, tasks that machines do a whole lot better than humans. Awesome. Let's let the machines do those little tasks. But over and over in my career, from the defense work all the way up to now, and kind of 3 companies later, it's really much more exciting when you get these opportunities to help human teams kind of up level with the right kind of balance of machines and humans. So creating kind of that hybridized human machine team. So going back to your question, it's sort of a long way around to your very specific question, sorry. Going back to that question, it's really around, in this case, combining sort of traditional, what you would consider traditional demographic attributes. And our customers collect all sorts of different types of things. There's actually, beyond a certain level, very little standardization. They're interested in different sort of use cases. They buy different third-party data and aggregate that with their own customer data. So everybody's data looks a little bit differently. And that's just sort of the state of the world. That will continue, right? Data will not be standardized. You just have to deal with it. And so the way that we deal with that is to not assume too much, just in terms of the learning. So every new campaign starts out, and we're not assuming that we know a whole lot about our subject audience. What we want to do is use, in a sense, emails or messages as probes out into that audience and see what they respond to. So not try to predict from data itself what's going to happen, but actually use this probe in a very incremental way across those kind of waves of message sends to understand a little bit more about that population at large and see what the population tells us, right? So not assuming from data that we can really predict very much, but actually taking a much more empirical standpoint and trying to interpret as best we can. And sometimes we still don't know very much at the end, but we're honest about it. So interpret those results as best we can to help our humans, in this case, the marketers, take the next best step for their audience. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Let me ask you, in terms of data, is there a minimum amount of data that Motiva needs before it becomes effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, it's machine learning. It likes data, just as a general rule. So volume is definitely better than no volume. There's kind of two levers, though, that we can play with. And the two levers are time and sort of size of the population. So if we have a lot of time, but not a huge population, we can work with that. If we have a huge population, pretty much whether we have time or not, we can we can learn something. And so the trick becomes, all right, kind of working with our customers to understand how they are thinking about their larger communication programs, how they design campaigns, what are their goals at the end? Is it more awareness? Is it something more transactional? Different goals will dictate slightly different strategies. That said, we're typically best when we can work with about 1,000 people in a given wave. And a wave can be, one email send per day. It can be one per hour. But on a daily basis, we try to target about 1,000 as a minimum. We do see results below that, but the confidence that we have in the results, and when we kind of produce any results in the campaigns and the analytics that we focus on, is this level of confidence we have in those results. So we're very honest and transparent about sort of what we believe and how sure we are. And the confidence level, as you kind of go down in the size of the population, will kind of taper off. So you can, as a human, you can say, well, I think these two versions of the email between them account for a good bets if I were to choose one or two of them, but I'm not all that sure. I'm like 40 or 50% sure that is actually the case. And a marketer may say, well, for my purposes, that's good enough. That's better than I would have done otherwise, and I'll take that result. But what we want to do is generally operate at a higher level of confidence. So we try to up that N, as you will.
Can I just ask very quickly with regard clients, does Motiva provide a standalone solution for marketers like myself, let's say, or is it typically more, call it the intelligence behind other platforms, other sort of marketing automation platforms?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So right now, you could think of it as a brain for kind of MarTech stacks. So it would plug into something like Oracle Marketing Cloud and make that entire suite a whole lot smarter. What we found is that in working with a variety of these platforms, they're still based on this notion of push. They're still based on a lot of the same sort of conceptual assumptions around how marketing should work, and trying to essentially make it easier to push. And going back to kind of where we're coming from and sort of our mission, what we really want to enable is that relationship and eventually kind of bilateral communications. And so the thing that we're thinking about is what is that standalone new solution, that kind of end-to-end solution that enables that relationship building, enables certainly push, but it also enables listening, response, conversation, and a kind of much fuller sense of how you communicate with those customers. So beyond push. And what if you had this machine intelligence at the core driving everything and helping the humans in the loop, the marketers in this case, actually scale what they're able to do? We call it kind of scaling empathy, right? And so we think there's a way to deliver this through technology. And we're actively pursuing, and I won't say too much more about it, but we're actively pursuing a fuller end-to-end solution that really does do some very different kinds of things.
Oh, very, very exciting. So I know that you can't share too much with me without having to kill me. But in terms of general trends from your experience, let's say in your space specifically, or marketing in general, what are you seeing as sort of prominent trends within the industry?
Well, yeah. So there's a few that I'm seeing. Some are troubling and some are really exciting. So among the troubling ones, it kind of hinted at it before, but this sort of obsession with artificial general intelligence, sort of an unfounded fear of kind of Skynet coming in and taking over the world. But on the other hand, equally bad is sort of excitement for that version of that world to come and soon, please, and automate our working lives away. And, you know, for me, it's just sort of a distraction, largely. I don't think we're going to get to artificial general intelligence anytime soon. I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, frankly. But on the other hand, as I mentioned before, I think people are also coming around to this alternative notion of augmentation, these sort of the augmentation story, and using humans and machines together in new ways to accomplish new types of tasks that neither party could achieve without the other. And that's really exciting to me. And I've seen examples of this working in my own experience, and we're excited to kind of push the boundaries here with Motiva. So the kind of automation, augmentation story is a big one, and we'll, I think, continue to see that battle play out. I think more tactically, and maybe of interest to viewers here is probably heard in the ether something about the deep learning, a very specific type of machine learning that's built on neural nets, and which is an older technique, but has found new life with new hardware architectures, especially, and just being able to do some specific things in completely new ways. So technology-wise, very exciting. Machine learning-wise, very exciting. One of the specific ways, though, that this will change the way marketing gets done, and probably force some of what I've described here, is a new generation of deep learning backed spam filtering and ad blocking is now going to be hitting the market very shortly. And that will be built into browsers. It will be built into probably at the OS level across platforms, mobile and desktop. It will be built into obviously Gmail, but other corporate email filtering systems. You'll see this kind of pervasive spread of a new class of filtering coming. And that will make this whole push story a whole lot harder. So if you're still doing the old thing and just relying on push, it's going to get harder and harder for you to show the same results, and most likely the performance of your efforts will suffer severely, I'm expecting. And so that'll be hitting the market literally this next year or so, and you'll see this basically. So the kind of the consternation that we already see in SEO and the ad tech space just generally is about to get a whole lot worse. That'll be my prediction.
Should we start using more, personal assistants, that in the future, it's going to be more about pleasing the assistant than it is pleasing Justin Jones, because it's the assistant that's going to be scanning all the content and everything first to make sure that it's relevant for me and what I'm looking for.
I think that's right. I think that it wouldn't be so much on the chatbot side. It's more on the personal assistant side. On the other hand, the personal assistant space is still pretty weak. And the challenge with personal assistants just generally, and so I have some background here. I was the product manager for the DARPA PAL program that we ran at SRI, Personalized Assistant That Learns, out of which Siri came. So I'm somewhat familiar with the kind of underlying issues here. And the real challenge with that space is trying to do too much in a general way, trying to be sort of all things to all people. And you wind up being sort of, a shallow use or a shallow tool for 80% of the population, but not super useful in a deeper way. And it's this kind of challenge of, generalized intelligence versus narrow AI or narrow machine learning use cases where you can, potentially really focus on a domain and go much deeper, be more useful. So I have a problem thinking that's so much of a threat to marketers quite yet. Maybe down the road a bit. I think the much bigger thing is this new generation of filtering, which is literally on our doorstep. I mean, you'll see next year a whole lot of hair being pulled out over that particular issue.
Oh, nice. I can't wait, man. So there's one final question, if you don't mind. In terms of implementing AI, so let's say there's a business out there, they realize, we need to at least be exploring artificial intelligence within our business. What advice would you give that company that's never used AI before?
Yeah, that is a great question. I guess the thing that I would advise, just given all of the hype in the space generally is to be thoughtful and go slow. Don't jump into the water without a plan. Have staff that are dedicated to measuring the results of whatever you're going to do. It doesn't matter whether it's something like Motiva or something else. It really doesn't matter what it is, but measure those results. Don't just sort of take on faith whatever vendors are pushing at you. And be thoughtful about, what next steps you should take as an organization based on an evaluation. Just thinking about it, right? That's mostly what I advise our customers is like, don't believe us, see it for yourself. If you don't feel like it's having value, totally understand. And so I would say it's a sort of an antidote to the hype that's out there. There's one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is we see a little bit of an AI winter here because there's so many claims and they are so extravagant and largely untrue or a stretch at least. And so I think the antidote to that is really just being thoughtful about the approach and getting serious about measuring those results.
David, this is absolute gold. Thank you so much for taking the time to share Motiva with us and how you can actually help us as marketers sort of deliver that optimal campaign every time that produces results consistently. And also the insights around the future of anti-spam. I mean, this is a biggie for us as well as marketers. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I wish you the best. And no doubt we'll be speaking again in the foreseeable future.